right, 5 minutes after 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Had an interesting topic. You know, recently I got an annual pass to the state parks in the state of Florida. So now I have a whole year, for one whole year, I can go to every park in the state of Florida. Every state park, right?
Yes.
I know. Let's see if it works out financially. Anyway, we really have some really beautiful state parks, and you know, when you think about how we have been in history as far as human beings, you know, we haven't been the cleanest species on the planet. I was reading this interesting thing, by the way, that there was some worms that eat like bad waste.
Oh, okay.
Like there's some microbes that eat the radiation in Chernobyl. Have you ever seen these things?
Yeah, I have.
But if nature has the ability to correct our mistakes, then I think there's probably a point when we just make the mistake to such a degree that we are even going to give that fail-safe system, whatever you call it, in nature, a hard time. Mm-hmm. Lisa Garcia is on the phone. She is the Vice President of Litigation for Health and Earthjustice. I think she's been with us before.
I think so,
right?
Yes.
The Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, is having a hearing on March 25th involving mercury and other toxic air pollutions from coal-fired power plants, something we should pay attention to. Good morning, Lisa. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
Pretty good. Where are you?
I am sitting in Washington, D.C. right now. So we're gearing up for the Supreme Court case, and Earthjustice, the team here in Washington, D.C. is getting ready.
And what do you have, a glass of iced tea? I hear some ice.
It's coffee.
It's coffee.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. In the North, we do coffee, not tea. It's not warm enough yet for iced tea.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you for being on the air with us today. So, you know, when you think about what we do and how we live, we take for granted the fact that the energy we're using is coming from some place that's burning something. I mean, all energy comes from something burning something else. So what does the Supreme Court need to be convinced of?
So this is a case regulating for new rules on mercury and air toxics, essentially reducing those emissions from coal and oil-fired power plants. And so what the Supreme Court really needs to understand is, I would say two things. One is that the Environmental Protection Agency that issued these rules for the first time issued these standards on mercury and air toxics, that the agency has that discretion, and that is well within their authority to issue limits on that. And even when they looked at what types of limits on mercury, they based it on the best control technology that is already in place at many of these power plants in the United States right now.
Okay.
That EPA is issuing this. And the second huge thing that they need to understand is that the reason that EPA did this was to control the emissions of these hazardous air pollutants that will essentially save up to 11,000 premature deaths a year, reduce heart attacks, reduce asthma attacks. Of course, that leads into health care costs that are reduced and days of work that are lost daily because of all these health impacts. So it's a huge savings.
So if I was to take a tour of a coal burning plant, and the ones that are abiding by the rules, what would I see that is making the air better? Is it a filter of some sort?
Yeah, so they have control. It's pollution control equipment. Essentially, it's a type of filter within the stacks, and then also some power plants have switched to cleaner fuels, and sometimes that may be even combined, but not solely relying on coal or oil. And one of the biggest things, so Florida actually has about 15 coal power plants, and what you're seeing is that this is really focused on the oldest facilities. So half of the coal-fired power plants in the United States were built over 40 years ago. And so in my mind, the fight is about having to upgrade an old clunker. And yes, it's going to cost money, but really we all get to the place where we have to update our car.
Right.
Understand that technology and innovation has gotten us to a place where you can have a power plant. We all love to turn our lights on, and I'm sure in Florida use their air conditioning. But you can do it at a lower cost to people's health, and that's really the important piece here.
Well, since all of these facts are being brought to the forefront, why aren't the power plants doing it willingly? How come the Supreme Court has to make a law?
Well, essentially, the Supreme Court is looking at a tiny question in the overall spectrum of rules, and that is whether or not the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, had to look at costs before it determined that they had to regulate power plants. And so, once again, EPA based it on the fact that some facilities are already using this control equipment. I think, like I said before, the reason everyone in the industry or owners of coal-fired power plants aren't doing it is because they could delay upgrading these older facilities, or maybe just use.
Really? Well, you know what bothers me about this? You know what bothers me about this, Lisa, is the fact that we had, and I don't know if this is exclusively Florida, but
Yeah.
we had, I guess our government, our state government, decided it was okay to charge us, consumers of electricity, for future building of nuclear plants. Mm-hmm. Even if there was no promise that that nuclear plant was going to be built, we could be charged extra money for something that doesn't even exist.
Yes.
And what you're saying is that if it cost extra to put these filters in, obviously the extra cost would be passed down to the consumer. So we can't pass that down, something that'll clean up the air, but we can pass down something we don't even know will happen.
Yeah, well, I don't know the particular situation in Florida, but you have seen certain states try to say, okay, you can pass through the cost to the consumer. And I think in this situation, you really need to understand that the plants that have gone through this change over into the better technology, they're operating at a profit. They are very good, and the economy is just going very well for them. So I don't think that it is a question of passing it on to consumers. I really just think that this is about running, having the old clunkers run out their life and not having to upgrade and really focusing on we say it's the profits over health, which is not the right question that the Environmental Protection Agency answers. They need to figure out what the best health cost is, and this is why they implemented these rules.
So we all always talk about writing our congressman, but I don't think anybody ever writes to the Supreme Court. Do they even read their email?
Yeah.
No, you can't. No, I am not tell you to write to the Supreme Court, but just that everyone should be aware, and it is worth writing to your legislators, your elected officials, certainly to the agencies, to say that we do care and put above profits our health, especially when we know it's not going to completely destroy the economy, and that this is really important. I read somewhere that for instance, this rule, for every dollar spent to reduce pollution, Americans are going to get $3 to $9 in health benefits. So there's a huge argument for us to be able to say that the Environmental Protection Agency was set up to protect human health and the environment, and that is their job.
Well,
and that types of rules should move forward.
And from what I understand, even though the Chinese don't want to admit it, it looks like you're doing something right. I mean, maybe it's always a struggle, but at least there's somebody saying, this needs to be cleaned up. And from what I understand, that in China, they're really having a hard time with air pollution. So
Exactly.
I mean,
yeah, you see the pictures of Beijing, or there's even in this country, though, we have certain high ozone alert days. Days when they say certainly kids who already have asthma can't go out.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're already seeing the impacts, and why not roll it back? And then just the indirect benefits of making sure that we're doing something to reduce the climate change impacts. I mean, I know there's still some questions about that, but the fact is we are seeing larger climate events like hurricanes and tornadoes.
Right.
And so here's just a smart way to say, look, we have the technology. We know that you're going to operate at a profit, and so why not do this for the communities that live in and around your source, but also in the United States. So I think there's no downside to this rule for anyone in the United States,
Well,
and certainly for us to show globally that we're taking steps to protect.
So we'll wait till March 25th and see if they agree. I hope so. Lisa,
so-
you didn't grow up in D.C. You sound more like a New York, New Jersey girl.
I am. I moved down here from Brooklyn, but
See, I could hear it. I could
can
hear
tell.
it.
I cannot get away with it.
She's stirring her coffee
Yes.
in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Probably can't stand it there.
Yeah. No. But I do. I mean, this is, yeah, exactly. But even as a New Yorker, I know that it's important. These types of, regulations are just important to protect everybody. In New York City, there's no coal-fired power plants. But, we're one nation, and it's really important.
Yeah, but there's
protect-
plenty in Jersey, and it's just across the river.
Yeah, and there's plenty in Florida, so.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Well, Lisa, thank you for being on the air. You're welcome back anytime. Thank you for the great information that you gave us.
So much. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. All right, we'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. Partly sunny this afternoon with a high 85 to 88. Partly cloudy tonight, low 63 to 66. Partly sunny, pleasant tomorrow, high 84 to 88. And then tomorrow night, clear, low 62 to 65. Sunny on Friday with a high of 85 to 89. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm Steve Williams.
This weather forecast brought to you by Tri-County Generators 1-800-622-1957. Don't get caught with your power down. Call Tri-County Generators now, 1-800-622-1957.
WOCA AM 1370.
96.3. 96.9.